Alright guys, now it's time for the next episode of Juan Talks About, and now we're going to talk about my childhood cartoons and TV shows. The ones that I grew up with, you know, some shows from the early 2000s and some classic times. There will also be some shows that you may have not remembered and some shows that everyone has seen, but then there are also some shows that were already becoming big and a few other shows that were popular in the 90s but then started dying off midway through the early 2000s, mainly from Nickelodeon. So there's some good shows, bad shows, and short-lived shows, mainly the ones that are really popular and some that aren't talked about as much. So I just really hope you all just enjoy this new episode of Juan Talks About. Where do I begin? The first thing that comes to my mind whenever I think of my early childhood when I was very little, I think of SpongeBob and Blue's Clues, because SpongeBob and Blue's Clues are my top two favorite cartoons when it comes to animation and the Nickelodeon. I think Blue's Clues might be one of the very first shows I've watched because Blue's Clues was made in the mid-90s when I was born. I was born in 1998, so I guess Blue's Clues was one of the very first shows I've ever watched as a kid, as a very toddler. And I think SpongeBob is the second one that I first watched because SpongeBob was made in 1999 when I was like a year old, and well, I couldn't stop watching it when I was very little, and I was getting more and more into SpongeBob, especially when the movie was announced, the first movie, and I continued watching all throughout the years. And what about all the other movies and TV shows that I ran into? Well, The Lion King was around, so I saw the cartoons. Same goes for Courage the Cowardly Dog. I was too little, I was too frightened. I never got to watch the show that much. Same goes for old Mickey Mouse cartoons that I saw on VHS all the time. But Mickey Mouse wasn't my favorite. It was Donald and Goofy that I admired a lot more, especially when they were on the same cartoon. And that wasn't good enough. House of Mouse was my favorite show where they have tons of segments of every Disney character watching entertainment. Same goes for Lilo and Stitch. When the movies were popular, there was a TV series. Everyone admired that show. When I was watching Cartoon Network, I saw Ed, Edd n Eddy as a kid. I only saw a few episodes until when I was like a preteen, but then I started watching it again recently. I should have watched this show a lot longer. Same goes for Looney Tunes. I saw the Looney Tunes every once in a while as a kid, but recently they're a lot more funny than I remembered. Same goes for Ren and Stimpy. Even though Ren and Stimpy wasn't around on Nickelodeon anymore, I remember watching them on the internet and a few times. All that was already a big show back in the 90s, but then by the early 2000s when I was around, it was already ending in early 2005, but I at least saw a few episodes here and there. But I loved it. Even the newer episodes were still funny, it was good. Even Rugrats was already still popular in the early 2000s, but I was a little too late because Rugrats has been around for much longer. It's no longer the longest running Nickelodeon show thanks to SpongeBob. And let's not forget about another sketch show, Amanda Show. That show was definitely around when I was younger. They still had reruns in the early 2000s until like 2008, I think. I admire that show. It was really funny. As I've mentioned earlier, Rugrats, All That, and The Amanda Show were already ending when I was around, when I was becoming a little older. That's why I've said that there were a few shows that were ending and starting, and they were ending. Rugrats was finished in 2004, while All That and The Amanda Show were ended a little sooner. Especially The Amanda Show, it ended in 2001. It was a spin-off of All That, and All That was been around for a very long time. But they had to end it sometime, because if they were still around today, it would have been a lot worse because Nickelodeon isn't as good as it used to. We'll rant about Nickelodeon someday soon, so I hope you all enjoy that video someday. Now let's move on to Disney shows. The first show that came to mind from Disney Channel back then in the early 2000s was the Lizzie McGuire Show. It was good. It even had its own movie. My sister loved watching that show a lot, and I liked it too. Same goes for Randy and Mr. Whiskers. That show I admired a lot as a kid, especially when I was in elementary school. I loved its silly, gross-out slapstick humor. The Proud Family, even they had some humor that was quite enjoyable. Even they had a movie, but it wasn't in theaters. It was made for TV. It had to end somehow. And let's not forget about That's So Raven. That show is by far one of the greatest Disney Channel shows ever, and it was one of the last good shows during its early 2000s. It ended in 2006 or 7, I think. And it's a shame that we didn't watch Disney Channel that much. And the reason why we can't watch Disney Channel that much is because our cable didn't have that channel, so we watched Cartoon Network. I saw Powerpuff Girls a few times, not a lot, but it was a good show and it ended when I was around. And as for Camp Lazlo, I remember watching that show back when I was in elementary school. It was great, it was funny, it was a sad shame that it was short-lived, but I still admired watching it. Same goes for Chowder, because that show was really funny. It was the biggest shows to ever break the fourth wall, more than Deadpool, and I loved it. I really did. I'm glad I watched that show. Same goes for Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. That show was incredible. It was one of Cartoon Network's best shows, and Cartoon Network started going downhill along with Nickelodeon in 2010. Now let's just talk nothing but Nickelodeon. Nickelodeon was the best network that I watched when I was little because of Avatar: The Last Airbender, one of the greatest shows ever made. Same goes for Barnyard, another good show. People say it was stupid and mean and just crappy, but I thought it was funny. I thought it was great. Crappy movie though. El Tigre, that show was good. I remember watching its announcement when I saw the movie Nacho Libre with Jack Black. It was a decent show. That one only ran for one season. Danny Phantom, now that's a classic right there. That show was awesome. Many people prefer that over modern Fairly Odd Parents, but it ended so soon. It ended really shortly. And let's not forget about the good old mighty Drake and Josh, the greatest live-action Nickelodeon show ever known to exist. It was a spin-off of a spin-off. Spin-off of The Amanda Show that was a spin-off of all that. I'm glad that show existed. It's a sad shame that they didn't air that anymore. Same goes for Zoe 101. That show was great too. The reason why that show ended, because of that actress in the middle, Jamie Lynn Spears, was pregnant by the time the show ended in 2008. And then there was Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide, a great show about middle school, showing lots of good advice for the kids that lived in middle school. It was really funny and stupid, but still memorable. iCarly, one of the very last good shows that Nickelodeon had offered, as well as one of the last shows that I remembered as a child. Like, I was still in my childhood by that show ended. Mr. Me, that show was short-lived in Nickelodeon, but it was still a few seasons outside of the US. Oh my god, Fairly Odd Parents. Good show when its first run without Poof and Sparky. I prefer that over this Fairly Odd Parents. I hate the modern Fairly Odd Parents. Ugh, I hate that show. The modern Fairly Odd Parents. Jimmy Neutron. That show went in 2006 along with its original run with Fairly Odd Parents, while Fairly Odd Parents returned in 2008. Jimmy Neutron was one of my top favorites as well. Good show. And finally, a short-lived show, Cat Scratch. It only had one season in 2006, and I remember getting toys from McDonald's, watching the show, and I loved it, although I had one major complaint. The designs themselves. Look at them. Most of them don't even look like cats except for Gordon. And before we finish, let's finish talking about a few other cartoons that I saw on Boomerang and a few other Cartoon Network stuff. Pink Panther, I also remember the live-action reboot with Steve Martin, but the cartoons were even funnier. Popeye, I saw it a few times on YouTube and a few other DVDs with compilations of old cartoons. I love that cartoon. It's one of the greatest as well. Scooby-Doo, I had like a ton of VHS tapes of Scooby-Doo, Where Are You, and a few other Scooby-Doo cartoons as well as the movie. Whew, I guess that's all we have to do. So, that's all the cartoons I have to talk about, folks. Whew, I'm glad I got that out of my system, everyone. I really hope you all have enjoyed this video, and put down in the comments below and let me know what cartoons you grew up with. I want to know, okay? So, did you all grow up with any of these cartoons? And if not, then let me know, especially if you're not from around America, because most of these cartoons are American, and a few others, they might be originated from different countries, but you know what I'm saying, right? So, I really hope you all like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And stay tuned for more new videos. I promise I will do more reviews and more gameplays for you all. So I hope you all peace out, rock on, and have a nice day.